So Starfield is plagued by poor design choices and, in my opinion, is close to a total letdown. So this video is going to talk a little bit more about the design choices and overall gameplay, as opposed to the story and side quests. So let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. And in my opinion, it is Starfield's biggest issue and the worst design choice that they could have ever made. This game's biggest flaw or biggest design choice that completely crippled the game's experience is the 1,000 planets. I do not understand why they went with that design choice. They have about 3 cities in the main game, Jemison, Neon, and Aquila City. Jemison to me is just this corporate, boring city that is full of loading screens. It's actually one of the cities that has the least amount of loading screens, funny enough, and it still feels like too much. Aquila City is like a cowboy western kind of town. I don't even know, man. Like, I don't find it very interesting. But I did stay on Neon a lot of the time, and Neon was great. It was a really, really cool place. But the biggest part of it was all the loading screens. The loading screens were terrible. It felt like every time I walked down an alley, it was just another loading screen. So instead of having 3 to 5 carefully crafted worlds that could have been the size of like Far Harbor, they decided to go with 1,000 procedurally generated ones. I guess because of time constraints, but that doesn't make sense because they've had like 8 years to make this game. Unless it's just been in development hell through that entire cycle, which it probably was because they couldn't figure out what to do with the game. I feel like the better choice would have been, let's just say three, medium-sized worlds that would equate to what would have been either Fallout 4's map or some sort of similar map. I can't understand why they went with 1,000 procedurally generated planets. Because as a concept, a Bethesda game that takes place in space sounds unreal and amazing. It was literally my most hyped game of all time. But the second I heard 1,000 procedurally generated planets, I was like, oh god, this has the potential to be really bad. And unfortunately, the game kind of ended up being what I was fearful of. When you have 1,000 procedurally generated planets, there's no meaning to them. And I've thought about this for a while, and it kind of makes sense in a way just because the game is about stars and the star system and colonizing the universe and everything that goes with that. And the realistic part is that every planet is going to be barren. But from a gameplay perspective, why in the world would you have 1,000 procedurally generated planets with a handful of points of interest that all feel the same? Dude, every time you walk into one of those caves, there's never any enemies in there. There's always some like lame loot. There's one little hallway. Like it's basically nothing. I truly do not understand. In my eyes, it kind of made this game a failure, and I'm sure a lot of other people in the community would agree. Commercially, you can argue that it's a success, but at the same time, you can kind of argue that Microsoft put all of their eggs in one basket. They really needed this game to win. So of course, Microsoft needs a return on investment. They bought Bethesda Studios for like $7 or $8 billion, some insane amount of money. And of course, they need their products to make them money back. I can't imagine how much it costs to make something as big as Starfield. And it wasn't the colossal success that it needed to be. They really, really needed Starfield to push this Xbox Series and the next generation. They needed a generational game like Skyrim was, like the Fallout series has been. They really needed something huge, and I think Bethesda completely failed. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video. I've been pumping out some more recently, and I'm going to be making more about Bethesda titles and whatnot, so subscribe to stay tuned. Before the game came out, it was always marketed as if it was Skyrim or Fallout in space. I'm pretty sure that's literally what Todd Howard said, is that it was Skyrim in space, and that is not at all what we got. How Bethesda had so much time to make this game, and it feels like every point of interest that you come across on these completely barren planets means nothing. I see the same shards that are sticking out of the ground. I see this little oasis in the this little oasis they put there, and then you have these medical farms or whatever they are, medical surgical factories, and it's the same thing for every single planet. And they don't even change up the spawn location of the enemies or the loot spawn location. So you're literally getting a carbon copy across every single procedurally generated planet. So even though this game has a lot of issues with the actual planets themselves, and of course the non-handcrafted content, but as for the worlds themselves, I think they're really, really beautiful. Like if you're just really bored and want, no action and to have nothing to do, if you just walked around those planets, it's somewhat pretty cool. Definitely makes you feel like you're on a different planet. You can look up. It's really, really pretty. But at the same time, like, if you have nothing to do on those planets, then what's the point of being there? Bethesda has been getting criticized for a while about their lack of NPCs in the world, and you never really noticed it with Fallout 4 because the place was nuked, and you can kind of, make that call of there's no people in the world or there's not as many. Skyrim, honestly, it never felt like there were not a lot of NPCs. It felt like there were plenty of them. But in Starfield, it just feels desolate. The towns and cities feel completely desolate, like there's nobody really in there. And it becomes really apparent when you walk into the club in Neon, because I'm sure everybody has seen the comparison videos of the club in Neon versus like Cyberpunk, and it's just a joke. It's like it's so bad. It's so bad. So on top of the procedurally generated worlds and landscapes, there's just, again, not enough points of interest to make them even remotely interesting. So I just don't understand why they didn't go for like 3 to 5 worlds, because it would have been a lot of work, but it's not like they're not used to a lot of work. They've worked on Fallout 4 and Skyrim, 2 of their most successful games of all time, and it took them, 3 to 5 years in development, and this one had 8 years. It's just crazy to me that they spent hundreds of millions of dollars in development costs and marketing and everything that comes with publishing a game to come out with the worst reputation that they have ever gotten to. Like, I'm sure the morality at the company has to be at an all-time low, and that sucks because, like, what does that mean for the next game? I do think the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be okay because they've gotten so much backlash from this. At this point, they have to know exactly what their player base wants, which is exactly what it was before Starfield. Wide open map, great quests, great story, lots of points of interest, and that's all we need. I just really hope that they understand that they made a horrible design choice with Starfield, and hopefully that this is just a one-off. Hopefully this is a one-off, and the Elder Scrolls 6 doesn't face any of these same issues, because there's also been a lot of controversy about the Elder Scrolls, or Bethesda team, just kind of plugging their ears and not really wanting to hear the negative things coming at them, especially with Shattered Space. I mean, that was supposed to give Starfield a second life and really address the concerns that everyone, including myself, was having with the game about having procedural generation and, not really having a handcrafted world. But even the DLC was kind of a colossal failure, at least in the public's eyes, and at least in the review critics' eyes. It did not do well at all. That's going to be a whole separate video, but I do think it's relevant. So some of the good things, though. I do think the moment-to-moment gameplay is really good. It's probably Starfield's greatest strength. I only have about 40 hours in the game, and in my opinion, it's been kind of tough to pick up, even since Shattered Space. But the one thing that I do keep on coming back for is the gunplay. Whenever you're inside the spaceships, and it's like tight, close-quartered environments, and there's enemies everywhere, and you have a shotgun, and then you have an SMG, honestly, that's where Starfield is at its best, considering the rest of the game is not great, or at least what I wanted it to be as far as exploration. When you do get in those tight, cramped corners or just get in a firefight, the combat is so good that most of the time I can kind of forget what I'm playing and just think that I'm playing a really fun game, or like a really fun shooter game. They've also made the movement far better. Like how I talked about in my last video with Fallout 3 going to Fallout 4. In Fallout 3, you felt like you were a plank walking up and down. At Fallout 4, they actually gave your hips some movement and added joints to your legs and whatnot. And they took it a step further with Starfield. It just looks a lot better. It feels a lot better. Even in third person, it's a lot better. They've obviously improved it over time. So in summary, I really just think Starfield could have been one of the best games ever made, or possibly one of the best games Bethesda has ever made. If they made 3 to 5 worlds that were the size of Far Harbor and had, let's say like 10 planets that were completely procedurally generated, or let's say after you get out of bounds from the handcrafted map on the 3 to 5 worlds, then it's procedural generation. I feel like there's a happy medium that could have been found here, but for whatever reason, they just threw all their eggs in one basket and decided to go with completely procedurally generated worlds. So I do think at this point, they should really just fully move to Elder Scrolls 6. I don't even think they should work on Starfield anymore. it's kind of a failure. It's not even kind of, it's definitely a failure in the public eye as far as like gamers. I hate saying that word, but yeah, probably like gamers, they all think Starfield's pretty bad. I really don't think they should keep investing money into Starfield, but I really think they should move all of the team and all of their resources over to Elder Scrolls 6 to obviously make it the best game it can possibly be. But yeah, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Tune in for the next video. It'll be out soon. See ya.